Hi, I'm Wanda from Alanda Craft, and this is our Quilting Blocks channel. Now today we're going to show you how to make this super easy, super quick propeller block. Now it looks fabulous with or without sashing as a quilt, and what we'll be doing is creating this one 10-inch block. But you can see how fabulous they look when they're all put together. So let's get on and show you how to make it. So here's what you need. 2 squares that measure 7 1/4 inches in contrasting fabric. Then you need 1 square that's 2 1/2 inches square, and you'll need 2 strips that are 2 1/2 inches wide by 11 inches long. However, if you're making more than one block, what you'll need to do is just cut across the width of the fabric. So it'll be 2 1/2 inches the width of the fabric for each of those. Now don't worry if you don't remember all those measurements, because they will be on the website at alandacraft.com. So now what we do is we take our 2 long strips and we place them right sides together, just like that. And we're going to sew it with a 1/4 inch seam all the way down the one side. And of course we're going to line those up nice and neatly, so we'll sew all the way down. And what you'll end up with is a strip like this. So the 2 bits are sewn together, and as you can see, I've used a 1/4 inch seam and I've pressed the seam to the dark side. So now I'm going to lay my strip out nice and flat, and I'm going to just cut off these selvages. So I'll just straighten that up. Okay, now I'm going to line up my ruler on the 2 1/2 inch mark, and you'll see that there. And I'm going to line it straight along the bottom edge so that I know that this is all going to be nice and straight. Now I need 4 of these strips at 2 1/2 inches, so I'll just cut 1. And I need to cut another 3 because each block takes 4 of these little sections here. So I have my 4 pieces cut, and that's for my 1 block. Now if I was making more than 1 block, I would continue to cut all the way down the strip in 2 1/2 inch pieces. So now that our 2 1/2 inch strips are out of the way, we're going to work with our 7 1/4 inch squares. So I take my 2 squares and I place them one on top of the other, right sides together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way around the outside edge. Now I'm not going to pivot at the corners, I'm just going to sew straight across, and then I'm going to start again at the outside edge and sew all the way down, and again here and here. So I'll go all the way around. And what I'll end up with is a square that looks like this. You can see here that I've run off at the ends. Now I'm going to take that and that square, and I'm going to cut it into triangles. So we just lay it on our mat here, and I get my ruler and line it up from point to point. And I'll just put my glasses on. Okay, and I'm going to cut straight across. Let's turn my mat and do the same thing again. So I'm going to end up with 4 half square triangles. Okay, so when I open them up, that's what they're all going to look like. So I'm just going to go and press those now, and I'll press them to the dark side. So as you can see, I've pressed all my half square triangles, and I've pressed the seam towards the dark side, and we do that so that it doesn't show through on the light. Now what I need to do is trim these, because we need them to be 4 1/2 inches square, and these are a little bit bigger. So I need to do this with all 4 of them. Just lay them down here and take my ruler. And I'm going to lay the 45-degree angle along the seam line, and I'm going to leave a little bit of an overlap at the 4 1/2 inch mark, and I'll show you why in a moment. So now I'm just going to do one side first. Right, so it's lined up nicely along that seam line. Straighten it. Okay, take my cutter. Okay, and along the top. Okay, so now I'm just going to turn my table round, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, only this time I'm actually going to line the 2 sides here up on the 4 1/2 inch mark, still making sure that I have the 45-degree angle along my seam line. Okay, it's all nice and neat, and we're going to trim this side off. Now I'm going to do that with all 4 of these squares, and they'll all be 4.5 inches square exactly. So once we have our block laying out how it's supposed to look, it's time to organise sewing it together. So what we're going to do is we'll do it row by row. So we'll take the first row and we'll lay those 2 pieces on top of each other and sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam. And when those 2 have done, we'll come back and we'll take the third piece and do exactly the same thing. Sew it with a 1/4 inch seam. Do the same on the bottom here, and again in the middle, we'll take those 2 pieces, sew them together, and then add that piece. So I'll go and do that now. So I've sewn all those rows together, and I'll just show you how I've pressed them. So the top row and the bottom row are pressed towards the middle, so you can see that there. Now the middle row, these pieces here are pressed towards the dark, so the outside pieces are pressed to the dark, but the middle is also pressed out to the dark, so that's pressed outwards. So you can just see how that looks. So now what we're going to do, so we're going to sew these rows together. So we'll take this one, put the right sides together, line them up. Now, because of the way we've pressed it, these seams here will nest beautifully and you'll get these nice crisp points. So we're going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam. And when we've done that, we'll sew this piece onto that piece with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'll go and do that now, then I'll come back and show you the final product. So there we are, our propeller block is finished. And you can see on the back here that we've ironed our middle seams here to the outside. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget that the full written instructions with photos are over on the website at alandacraft.com. Okay, I'll catch you next time.